Nick was about to go upstairs and go to bed when he heard the sound of her footsteps on the stairs, quiet but insistent. Turning his head, Nick saw Rachel coming downstairs in leather pants and a light sequin blouse. Her hair lay loosely on her shoulders, and her gaze burned with anticipation. She seemed a few years younger again, not the tired wife he saw every morning with a cup of coffee. "Where are you going?" he asked, trying to keep his voice at least neutral. Inwardly, he felt a slight uneasiness. All of a sudden, his wife, dressed up, put on makeup. Perhaps she was going to a friend's house? Or maybe she is going to party. Rachel, having reached the last step, stopped, looked him straight in the eyes, and smiled as if she had a surprise in her pocket. "You know, Nick," she said, coming closer, "I was thinking it has been so long since we've been out. You're always busy with work, and I'm suffocating in four walls. We hardly spend any time together. So I thought, why don't we go to a club? Just relax, dance, listen to music, drink cocktails." "Please," she touched his arm lightly, tilting her head. Her eyes looked pleading, but her voice sounded almost commanding. Nick did not like nightclubs. Indeed, he hated them. Too loud music, too much pressure on the dance floor, crowds of tipsy teenagers going all out. But in recent months, he realized that more and more often he saw his wife only through half-sleeps and short evening conversations. Work, money, monotonous everyday life. It was as if they had turned their lives into a series of expectations and mutual recriminations. Maybe she really needed to blow off some steam, and maybe he could use a little shaking up too. "To the club?" he asked, looking at her clothes. "It is 9 o'clock at night, and it is probably the start of the action." And then, "We not young students, Ratch," he caught himself wanting to say it's not for us, but he bit his tongue. She laughed. Her laugh sounded light, reassuring, and a little mocking. "So what?" she parried. "I feel young, I really do, and I want to remember what it is to be alive. To dance till I drop, not to think about tomorrow, just once in a long time. Please let us go. No buts. I've got the idea in my head, and now I want to realize it." He hesitated, too tired to resist seriously, and the sight of her burning eyes always drew him in. She'd once known how to ignite excitement and passion in him, any time of day. She probably could now. It might be the only thing that could get them out of the quagmire their married life was turning into for a while. "Okay," Nick said, rising slowly from the couch. "Just do not laugh when you see me move so awkwardly. I'm used to the nightlife. Come on." She smiled even wider. "I promise, no funny stuff. Just a dance, just a little celebration. Thanks for agreeing." So there was a ray of hope for change in their house. Nick hurriedly changed into something more appropriate. Black jeans and a shirt, which he had once bought on sale and had worn only a few times. I pulled out a jacket to be closer to style, but then decided that a leather jacket would be more appropriate. Looked in the mirror, trying to see if he looked boring. Allowed himself a small thought. Maybe we could actually have a good time. Finally, they both left the house, got in the car, and drove to the very club Rachel had mentioned in passing for weeks. The glittering neon signs, the loud bass thumping straight to the heart, the line at the entrance. Nick stood next to Rachel, feeling the music pouring out of the doorway, almost drowning out all thoughts. He smelled cigarette smoke from the smokers near the entrance, and expensive perfume at the same time. Girls in high heels, guys in tight t-shirts, men and women of all ages. There were flashes of cell phones taking selfies. Some were already tentatively on their feet, and it was not even midnight yet. Business as usual. He had time to think before the guard himself called out to him, checking his ID and looking over his shoulder at the crowd. The bracelets on their wrists flashed. He and Rachel were stamped in, and they were inside this seething space where it was impossible to make out where any sound was coming from. Everything was mixing. Bass, glowing lights, laughter, conversations, the DJ's cries from the speakers. "Do you like it?" Rachel shouted, trying to outshout the music. Nick only nodded and shrugged, showing that it would take time to get used to it. He moved after her, maneuvering between groups of dancers. Inwardly, he felt a little clumsy, like he'd been pulled out of his comfort zone. But Rachel was literally glowing. Her eyes were running across the dance floor, catching the rhythm, and she was already dancing with her hips. It seemed she was about to break free from his arms and merge with the pulsation of the room. "Shall we order cocktails first?" she shouted. "You need to loosen up." He thought a cocktail really could not hurt, so he shook her hand and led her over to the bar. The bartender, clicking the shaker, quickly poured them 2 cocktails whose names Nick did not hear. He did not care. He just wanted to relieve the tension so he would not look like a bore. They clinked plastic cups and took their first sips. The sweet alcohol spread warmth. Nick suddenly felt a rush of euphoria. Perhaps it was good to get away from routine, at least for an evening. "Not bad," he said, winking at Rachel. "Told you," she smiled at him. "Thanks for doing this. Shall we go dancing?" She literally pulled him by the hand onto the dance floor. The crowd moved to the beat of the rhythmic tracks. Light beams slid across dozens of figures, and there was a haze in the air from the stage and laser units. Nick felt his heartbeat start to race inside him in unison with the music. He timidly tried to sway his shoulders, but the movements felt ridiculous. Rachel looked at him with a kind of approving laughter, encouraging him, but she was already moving smoothly, sensually, giving herself over to the rhythm. "Just dance, do not think about anything," she shouted in his ear. "Release the tension." Nick tried to close his eyes and imagine that they were somewhere in another world. And suddenly the music was not so aggressive. He caught the rhythm, stopped looking at who was moving how. They both laughed, bumped shoulders, and there was no more embarrassment. A few tracks went by like that, and then faster music started playing. Rachel abruptly released his hand. "I'll be right back," she said. "I'll just be a minute." He nodded, figuring she was going to the ladies' room. Left alone, Nick stomped among the dancers, but felt himself being pushed sideways by 2 young men who were engrossed in their own movements. Realizing that he would be uncomfortable alone on the dance floor, he stepped back and got out of the crowd. He emptied his glass, feeling the alcohol adding lightness to his body, but still feeling like he wanted cool water or another cocktail. He looked around, but Rachel still had not returned. Another 10 minutes passed. The music was changing, people around them were booming, laughing, splashing drinks. Nick thought it would be a good idea to refill his glass and look for his wife at the same time. He headed back to the bar. As he made his way through the crowd, he heard an explosion of merriment in one of the areas, but did not pay attention. It was not until he'd already handed money to the bartender and he was mixing him a drink that Nick felt anxious. Where was Rachel? Taking out his phone, he looked at the screen. No messages. It was unlikely she could have been gone that long. Taking 2 sips, Nick felt a prick of worry. Maybe she really is somewhere near the women's restroom, or out with a friend, he thought. But then why had not she come back to him? He tried to call, but the connection in the club was bad. Everything was crackling, the music was blaring, and the phone was ringing. He felt uneasy, but he decided he was getting worked up for nothing. Rachel was a grown woman. She could find him on her own. Still, he moved around the perimeter of the club, looking in different corners. Suddenly, Nick's eyes caught a familiar figure among the flashing lights. In the thickest part of the dance floor, where the neon lights flashed, he spotted Rachel's hair, which even in this light was recognizable. Her back was to him, clinging to some young guy in a white t-shirt and jeans. The one dancing, holding her by the waist. Probably just dancing, Nick's mind flashed, though something inside tingled painfully. He took a few more steps toward them, trying to get a closer look, but the crowd moved and obscured him. He had to squeeze through with his elbows. When the light from the pulsing spotlights illuminated their faces for a split second, Nick saw the guy leaning in unashamedly toward Rachel and kissing her. And she responds to that kiss, not pulling away, but reaching for him. Nick almost dropped the glass from his hands. For a second, he just stared, not believing what was happening. The distance between them, some 3 meters, but it was as if he froze. The desire to rush in, to pull her away by the hand flared up, but with it a wild wave of horror, resentment, rage rose inside. The boy pulled away, said something in her ear. Rachel smiled, snuggling even closer to him. Nick felt the blood rush to his temples and everything clenched in his chest. It was only a few seconds. The thought echoed in his head. Is this some kind of joke? Maybe a game? Maybe I'm imagining it? Or is she passed out from the alcohol? But no, there was nothing drunk in her movements or her gaze. She was dancing consciously. Finally, Nick shook his head, pushed someone away with his elbow, was next to her in a matter of moments, and grabbed Rachel's shoulder. What the hell is going on? He blurted out. The loud music made it hard to speak. Everything had to be shouted. Rachel recoiled, as if she had not expected to be caught face to face like this. The guy in the white t-shirt looked at Nick in surprise, obviously not understanding who he was or where he'd come from. Rachel's face flashed with confusion, momentary guilt, and then something like annoyance. Before Nick could say another word, she pulled her hand out and, trying to look as confident as possible, clawed through the music. "Let us get out of here," she shouted, trying to block out the hum. She did not rush to explain anything to the guy, just grabbed Nick's wrist and pulled him through the crowd. He stood in a daze for another 5 seconds, then followed her to the exit, feeling the deafening music rumbling behind him and everything turning inside him. Outside, they were blasted with the crisp night air. They stepped aside where it was not so crowded. Nick jerked his arm out sharply. "What is this shit?" he hissed, trying not to attract the attention of the guards standing nearby. "I saw you making out with that guy. What the hell?" "Rachel, explain yourself." She stared at him, breathing heavily after the hot atmosphere of the dance floor, and probably from shock. Confusion flashed in her eyes for a moment, as if she could not believe she'd been caught in the act. "It was just a prank, just a dance. I did not know what came over me. It was stupid. I was in a mood, stirred up by the music." She shook her head. "Do not make a tragedy out of it, Nick. It is a small thing." He clenched his fists, wondering how she could talk about such a thing so calmly. "A little thing." His voice sounded strained. "You think I do not get it? How can it be so easy? Look, let us go home now. I do not want to talk to you on the street outside the club. I need to process all this." She shrugged. "Okay, let us go." They did not say a word to each other as they walked to the car. Nick frowned at the road all the way behind the wheel, and Rachel tried to turn on the music a few times, but then stopped the track when she saw that her husband did not react. She was clearly embarrassed, but she kept up her bravado like a delinquent teenager with plenty of excuses. They drove home in silence. It was well past midnight when Nick slammed the door and walked into the living room, immediately turning on the lights. He looked at Rachel across the room as if she were a stranger. No matter how much he tried to calm down, his thoughts were racing. How could she? Maybe I really have gotten boring. Maybe she misses being young. But why this way? "Tell me," he said briefly. She walked to the back of the room, sat on the edge of the couch, crossed her arms. "Nick, well," she began. "It was just a kiss on the dance floor. He was swept away by the music, and I was swept away too. I wanted to feel some kind of drive. I'm sick of us sitting around the house like old people. It's not cheating if you think I'm sleeping with him or something." I see not even remember his name. She spoke quickly, almost memorized, and it made the words sound fake. Nick could not believe she could write everything off so easily as drive. "Do you take me for a fool?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. "This is not the first time you've listened to loud music in your life. But you remaking out with some 25-year-old boy?" "Yes, not 25, most likely." She wrinkled her nose, realizing she'd said too much. "Okay, never mind. I was excited by the atmosphere, the club, the youth around." She shrugged and repeated, harder, "Nick, come on, it does not mean anything." He stared at her, breathing hard. He felt his insides clench with pain. Her words made it clear that she really did not think it was anything serious. Now he had to either make a huge scene or to try to pull himself together. He struggled with resentment and pride. "What do you mean it does not mean anything?" he asked. "You crossed the line, and now you reacting like it is my fault. Or should I be ashamed that I do not dance like a madman?" "I just wanted to have fun," she said tiredly. "Stop making a monster out of me." Nick realized that continuing the conversation now was pointless. He was too angry to work out the details. "Okay," he hissed. "I need to cool down. Go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow." She nodded and left the room. Left alone, Nick felt his throat dry. He went to a pitcher of water, poured a glass, took a few sips. His thoughts were racing, What if it really is an isolated stupidity? Maybe it's worth forgiving? But something in her demeanor, in her voice, said it was not just about just dancing. He knew his wife too well not to notice the slightest insincerity in her eyes. In the morning, they both pretended that nothing terrible had happened. He went to work, she went to mind her own business. Nick felt resentment boiling in him, which he tried to drown out with rational thoughts. But every time he remembered the kissing scene, it was as if he'd been stabbed in the heart. A few days passed. Relationships became even more strained. Rachel kept cold, as if angry that he did not leave the stupid prank in the past. Nick convinced himself that maybe he should look into it in more detail. After all, she had not had any such pranks during their 10-year marriage. Still, one thought kept him on his toes. When she said, "It's just a dance," her eyes looked uncertain and her voice sounded fake. One evening, Nick got off work earlier than usual. He had a couple things to finish up at home, and he wanted to try to talk to Rachel more calmly. As he pulled up, he noticed a car parked at their front door, seemingly belonging to his wife's friend Jessica. The dark blue convertible she had recently bought, he definitely recognized. Apparently they were chatting about something of their own, he thought, and, parking, opened the door. The hallway was strangely quiet. Usually when Jessica came in, the girls were laughing loudly, discussing some news or watching a movie. But now there was no conversation to be heard. Nick walked into the kitchen, did not find them there, then into the living room, and saw a shadow flicker in the upstairs hallway. He stopped at the stairs and listened. "You said he was not coming today." It was a muffled whisper, clearly Jessica's. "I do not have time to hide." "I did not know either," Rachel replied sharply. "Anyway, hurry up, you have to come out soon." The voices died down. Nick felt everything shatter inside. "What do you mean? You said he's not coming. What are they even talking about?" He took a cautious step back, then went to his office, trying to move as silently as possible. Closed the door to create the illusion that he was gone. His heart was pounding, the thought throbbing in his head, they hiding something. Why is Jessica afraid he's home? After about 10 minutes, he heard footsteps. From his room, he watched through the loose door as Jessica came down quickly, put on her cloak, and walked out, tossing a quick bye. There was a look of annoyance on her face. Rachel did not say anything back to her, remaining standing in the hallway. As soon as her friend left, Nick walked out of the office. His wife flinched, not expecting him to be home. "You home early," she said dryly, fixing her hair. "Yes," he nodded. "Did you have any secrets?" "No secrets," she answered, but her eyes twitched nervously. "We were just discussing women-esque stuff, you know." Nick said nothing, but a suspicion was already brewing inside, a suspicion that had been nagging at him all evening. He remembered the kiss at the club, Rachel's reaction, Jessica's words, and he realized he'd been too naive. Maybe what he'd seen was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few days, Nick paid closer attention to detail, and soon his hunch was confirmed. In a conversation with acquaintances who mentioned one of Rachel's pranks, he learned that she had been to this very club more than once, and without him. They said she was often dragged there by Jessica when he was on business trips. If she went to the club, why hide it? Nick asked himself, but the answer lay on the surface. It was not the fact of going to the club that she was hiding, but the fact that she had a friend there, probably the same one he'd seen. Just a dance? No, it was not an accident. The days dragged on, and his suspicions grew stronger and stronger. He sensed that a lie lay between them, a real one that permeated their family life. He had to find out exactly what was going on, or he risked going insane with worry. One weekend, Nick decided he could not stay in the dark any longer. He found a way to find out who the guy's wife was at the club with was. It did not take long. He talked to one of the bartenders he knew. Turns out the young man's name was Tyler, and he was new in town. He was most often seen with some hot woman named Rachel. "Yeah, I remember her. She came in quite often," the bartender said with a chuckle, and Nick felt disgusted by the words. After gathering information on the guy, who, as it turned out, worked at an auto repair shop nearby, Nick decided to talk to her directly. He knew he was not going to use force, but he wanted to look into the guy's eyes and realize How deep was the connection? In the evening, when Rachel said she was going to a friend's house, obviously Jessica S. again, Nick drove to the auto shop. The workday was already coming to an end. Tyler stood near the entrance, shaking oil off his hands. It smelled like gasoline and rubber. When he saw the stranger, he raised an eyebrow. "Hey, can I help you?" he asked. Nick silently moved closer, groping for the skinny guy about 26, 27 at the most. He looked energetic, with a slightly cocky expression, but not angry. Tyler's eyes flickered with wariness. "My name is Nick," he said, clenching his fists slightly to stop the tremor in his voice. "I want to talk about Rachel." The young man's eyes widened in surprise, and he stammered. "Rachel?" he asked again. "From the club?" "Yeah, from the club," Nick nodded. "The one you're re-dancing with and kissing, and I do not know what else is going on. Except apparently there is a connection between you two, right?" Tyler cast a quick glance behind Nick's back, as if looking for ways to back out, but then sighed. "Look, is this somewhere we going to talk?" He pointed to the noisy room. "Coming with me. There's an office over there. We LL sit." Nick followed him, silently trying to keep his cool. They walked into a tiny room where there was a desk, a chair, a couple of chairs, and everything was piled up with catalogs of parts. Tyler leaned back on the edge of the desk, shook his head. "If you here to fight or something, I do not want any trouble," he began. "I came to understand the truth," Nick said surreptitiously. "She's my wife. Did you know that?" Hearing that made Tyler tense up even more. "What? Wife? Really?" He frowned. "Look, no, I did not know. She did not say anything like that. I did see her a few times at the club. She said she was single and just liked to hang out. I stayed out of her life, but we texted a little bit. Sometimes she'd stop by. Yeah, I thought we were just dating with no strings attached. I did not know she was married." Nick was silent, realizing that this guy might be telling the truth. He looked flustered, but not like a brazen liar. Rather, dumbfounded himself. "What makes you think she is single?" Nick clarified. "She might not be wearing a ring, for example." "Her ring?" Tyler laughed bitterly. "She said she just did not like jewelry." "What's it to me?" I did not go into detail. You know how many stories like that there are out there? I'm 26, single, working, hanging out. I see a beautiful woman. We dance, we kiss. She comes over to my place. How was I supposed to know she had a husband at home? Nick covered his eyes, taking a deep breath. She's South Bent's place? That confirmed his worst fears. So it was not just kissing, it was not just dancing they were having an affair. And now this Tyler guy regretted getting involved, not out of love or affection, but because he did not want to get in trouble. And yet he is not the main culprit. Rachel deceived both him and Nick. There was a pause. A wave of resentment, of anger, of hurt was rising inside Nick. But what was the use of hitting this Tyler guy? He looked cheated himself. "Sorry, man," Tyler added with a sigh. "If I'd known she had a family, I never would have gotten involved. I do not want any trouble. This is all wild. Tell me what I should do. You want me to disappear from her life altogether? But I did not mean to hurt you." Nick chuckled bitterly. "It is not a question of you. She has been lying to me all this time, and, as it turns out, to you. What's the matter?" "Nothing. Thank you for being honest. I guess that's it. Goodbye, Tyler." He turned around to leave. Tyler, apparently unsure of what to say, shook his head. Nick walked out of the auto shop, got into his car, and sat with his forehead against the steering wheel for a long time. It was confirmed. This was no accident. No, just a dance. His wife was cheating on him purposefully, probably for months. And the guy did not know he was messing with a married woman. When Nick got home, Rachel was already there. She was sitting at the table with a glass of wine, smiling strangely. "Hi," she said. "I bought a bottle of Chardonnay. Why do not we have a drink, talk about—" He looked at her with detachment. Not so long ago, he had thought her beautiful, desirable, beloved. But now all her beauty made him bitterly ironic. She was a fraud. She was playing on two fields, in the club with a young lover, and at home with her husband, trying to maintain the appearance of a normal relationship. "Do we have anything to discuss?" he asked, taking off his jacket. "Of course," she continued with a strained smile, trying to catch his eye. "I want us to forget about that stupid night. We can start over." Funny, Nick grinned. Look, why don't you tell me the whole truth? What really happened? Rachel frowned. Nick, I told you already. It was a kiss, just in a fit of passion. Yes, I like to dance. Yes, I'm going through a crisis. I want to feel young. But I do not want to destroy our family over nothing. Her words sounded cynical. Nick felt some kind of spring constricting inside, waiting to unravel. Then why did not Tyler know you were married? He asked quietly. I'd you just come from him? Her lips turned pale. Her face froze for a moment, and Nick realized she derealized everything. And her lies crumbled to dust. You were a Tyler S? She asked with a squeak. Yes, he confirmed. And, at least he was honest about seeing you. You've kissed more than once, have not you? You've been to his place. You never told him you had a husband, did you? Nick, I wanted to. Her voice shook. That's not what you think. But he was not listening. It was the moment when all the strings came together. Everything came into view. Her visits to the club, her friend Jessica, who covered for her, and the casual kisses on the dance floor, essentially the banal infidelity she'd been living for some time now. He said, fighting bitterness and trying not to raise his voice. I loved you. I really believed we were going through a difficult time together. But I realize now that you crossed the line, and you would have kept lying if I had not gotten to the truth. Her eyes filled with fear. Perhaps she was used to him being reserved, calm, intelligent, and never scandalized. But apparently she had not expected him to be able to tear their marriage apart like a piece of paper. Nick, she whispered, listen, yes, I've been in a relationship, but it is only because of your indifference. You always busy. You do not pay attention to me. I wanted to feel alive. P.S. young, passionate. It was like an adventure. But I'm here with you. And you sure I have to put up with this? Nick said coldly. Passion? Adventure? You making a buffoon out of me. She tried to move closer to touch his hand, but he recoiled. Something akin to despair flashed in her gaze. So what now? Do you want a divorce? She asked tensely, as if testing his resolve. I do not want anything. I do not want anything more to do with you, he said, heading for the stairs. Go upstairs and get your things. I'll pack them myself and throw them out on the street. You decide. Rachel froze. She did not immediately realize that he was being quite serious. Her eyes lit up with indignation. How can you do this? She wanted to shout, but she did not. She wanted to shout, but she realized that she had no excuse or even a convincing argument. Do not be an idiot, Nick, she hissed, anger in her voice. It's just an affair, just a affair. You overreacting. Yeah? He grinned. It's just? Then my actions will be just a reaction. I'm not going to live in a house with a woman who goes clubbing, kisses other people, lies, and thinks it's normal. He clenched his fists. There was so much raging inside him that he could have flared up, broken something, but he held himself back. It was more important to get her out of his life once and for all. They stood in silence for a minute, looking at each other, as if trying to figure out if it was still possible to go back. Then Nick said coldly, Go get ready. She staggered, as if she wanted to rush toward him, but did not dare. Without a look of sympathy from him, she turned and headed for the stairs with a frozen, angry expression on her face. Nick followed her gaze, then entered their bedroom next. Opening the closet, he began silently pulling out her clothes. She, standing next to him, was frantically gathering something into a bag. Stop it, she hissed. This is my house, too. I bought this house before we were married. He cut off, and I'm not going to live here with. The word traitor was on his tongue, but he did not want to make a theatrical scene. He gathered up everything that belonged to her, threw it in his suitcase. She stood there, crying with humiliation, but more from anger than remorse. Half an hour later, the suitcase with her belongings was already standing in the hallway. She looked at Nick, still in disbelief that she was being thrown out. He stood at the door. Go, he said tiredly. Nick, are you really kicking me out? She whispered, sobbing. It's not, yes. He did not even look at her tears. They were no longer tears of remorse, but rather resentment that she'd been caught. Let us call it a day. She exhaled sorrowfully, wiped her tears with her sleeve. She picked up her suitcase and slowly walked out the door. When she was outside, she stopped on the porch. Nick followed her. "You just wanted to dance," he said, looking her straight in the eye. His voice was quiet, steady, but there was a cold determination in it. "And I want to live without a prostitute." When she heard those words, she bit her lip, whether from rage or despair. But he did not care. He shut the door. Silence reigned. Nick was alone in the house. For the first time in a long time, he felt both pain and a strange relief. Pain because he realized his marriage was ruined. Everything he had once loved was gone. Relief because now everything was clear, no illusion, no deception, no empty hopes. He walked to the living room, which still smelled of Rachel's perfume, sat down on the couch, and closed his eyes. The scene at the club came to mind, the lights, the music, her body in the arms of a stranger. Tyler's words, "I did not know she was married." Yes, it's over. It might be painful to remember in time, but right now he knew he'd made a move he could not help but make. He did not want to live a life of deception. Outside the windows, the night air swayed the branches of the trees. He smelled cigarettes. Maybe one of the neighbors was out for a smoke. The empty house echoed with his footsteps. Nick still held a tiny spark of hope in his heart that someday he'd meet a woman who would not lie. For now, he just needed to process what had happened and learn to move on. To live, as he said, without a prostitute, without betrayal and constant falsity. He got up, turned off the light in the living room, lingering his gaze on the family photos where they were still happy. Suddenly, he realized he did not want to look at those photos right now. He walked over and turned them face down. Let them stay in the past, he thought bitterly. Then he went upstairs to the empty bedroom, hoping sleep would give him respite. Outside the door where their shared life had once flowed, there was a silence that felt like a fresh start. Maybe not a happy one, but at least an honest one. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.